The South Carolina Commune, the one anarchist society that actually predates the Paris Commune, and in many ways it was even more radical. It was founded by escaped African American slaves during the Civil War. And during the U.S. Civil War, the Confederate General Albert Pike warned that black soldiers will create a hell on earth, a hideous, horrid pandemonium filled with all the devils of vice, crime, vampirism, corruption, violence, political debauchery, and social anarchy. At least he got right about the anarchy part. Pike was correct in one sense, although not in the way he intended. His extension of liberty to African America did foster an atmosphere of social anarchy, from strikes and mutual aid society to squatting empty plots and seizing land from former masters, from the assertion of community control over the church and education, the enactment of economic and political reforms, even more radical than those of the Paris Commune. The movement of the post-Civil War Reconstruction presents a period of sweeping bourgeois democratization that lasted up to 6 years. African American participation in the region's state government and capitalist economy was secured against the former slave-owning aristocracy by ongoing presence of the Northern troops, largely at the behest of the radical Republicans such as Charles Sumner and Thomas Stevens. Matt Stockman's book "Race and Revolution" speaks to how Reconstruction faced limitation due to its dependence on the Northerners' bourgeois elements. And I quote from the book: "The bourgeois democracy revolution, the smashing of the feudal system of slavery, had been accomplished in alliance with the radical wing of the Republican bourgeois of the North. This alliance was short-lived. The transformation of the African American slave into free and independent peasants such as emerged from the bourgeois democratic revolution of France was not complete, nor could it be or it will be completed by any class or section of the bourgeois, not even the most radical. The Sumner Stevens group was the most extreme democratic the American bourgeois could produce. It rose at its greatest height during the Reconstruction period. Since that time, the bourgeois as a whole has moved steadily to a more reactionary position. End quote. Still, Reconstruction destroyed one of history's most hierarchical society, that of the Southern U.S. Confederacy, and replaced it with a society that white racists found deeply friendly to the foundations of white supremacist capitalist heteropatriarchy. Reconstruction could view as a social revolution with an anti-authoritarian wing that was dwarfed by counter-revolution and a lack of solidarity from leftists in the U.S. North. In South Carolina, Thomas Miller later described the achievements of Reconstruction. I quote: "We were 8 years in power. We have built schoolhouses, established charitable institutions, built and maintained the penitentiary system, provided for the education of the deaf and dumb, rebuilt the jails and courthouses, rebuilt the bridges, and reestablished the ferries." End quote. The political scientist Joe Onson insisted, and I quote, "The ignorance of the Black freedom movement is so profound that even anarchist tendencies within them get ignored. The Black Land Reconstruction government in South Carolina from 1868 to 1874, which Du Bois dubbed the South Carolina Commune, did far more toward building socialism than Paris Commune ever did in 1871. During a turning point in the Civil War over slavery was, according to the W.E.B. Du Bois, the general strike of enslaved people who ran away from their masters in the South and joined the Northern anti-slavery side of the war. This strike decided the war in North's favor, according to Du Bois. In total, some half a million slaves fled their masters. The historian Thavolia notes that while Du Bois focused on the role of black men in this general strike, women were major participants too. Enslaved women, such as one named Bois, took up arms against the Southern Confederacy. She was executed by her enemies. The women who supported the Northern Union Army did not always get favorable treatment with the Union soldiers. For example, an enslaved cook who welcomed invading Union forces found herself unrewarded for feeding the soldier her mistress' finest meat and food for 3 weeks. When the mistress asked a Union guard for protection from the submissive slave, the guard shot the cook instead. In the end, a member of the army deliverance in which the slave woman had placed her faith had committed the protection of a woman whose husband was the enemy's army. For the duration of the Civil War, writes Keven von Meter, slaves launched insurrections, sabotaged farm implements, set storehouses ablaze, and fled to join army union. Escaped slaves based on maroon communities waged guerrilla warfare. During the Reconstruction Act, after the 1867 divided the country south into 5 military districts. For the following 12 years, Blacks secured the right to vote and to high positions in political office across the South. The most extensive Reconstruction occurred in South Carolina, where blacks captured control of the state legislature. Due to the rise of white supremacist terrorism and the withdrawal of the federal troops and the foundation of the Ku Klux Klan, Reconstruction collapsed in 1877, and also the only successful coup d'etat in U.S. history, the Wilmington coup, leading the rise of Jim Crow. Black continued to use some of the same Reconstruction era direct action tactics in subsequent struggles for freedom. In the radical anti-capitalist vision among these African Americans, black demands for liberty struck against the hard armor of capitalism. By 1820, the cotton had become the dominant driver of U.S. economic growth, explains Edward Baxter in Half Has Never Been Told. The next 2 decades, cotton jumped in 14% to 42% of total U.S. exports. The rising cotton produced occurred mainly as a result of Bush's system under slavery. Sell drives would continue to push slaves harder and harder until they picked precisely as much content as they could. A slave who did not meet their quota was whipped. A slave who picked up their quota was given a quota. Productivity per slave increased by almost 400% from 1819 to 1860. At the dawn of the Civil War, slavery remained the central growth of the U.S. economy. The defenders of the slavery insisted slavery was so important to the economy that nonviolent tactics could not possibly abolish the institution. As James Hammond, a supporter of slavery, said in 1845, and I quote, "But if your course was wholly different, if distilled nectar from your lips and discourse sweet is music, do you imagine you could prevail on us to give up thousands of millions of dollars in the value of our slaves and thousands of millions of dollars more in the depreciation of our lands?" End quote. The capitalist extraordinary measure to reinforce slave-like conditions of free American Americans after the Civil War showed the importance of white supremacy to capitalism. In one scheme to convince lease systems, state leased imprisoned to work in mines, railroads, and timber industry. The prisoners were often treated worse than slaves, since the temporary employee had no incentive to keep the workers alive and healthy for the long term. Many prisoners of the convicted lease system died of abuse and disease. Many African Americans in the Reconstruction era wanted more than nominal emancipation. They wanted to enjoy the freedom and its fullest, and this journey led them to develop a radical anti-capitalist vision. According to the Bois, South Carolina's black residents consciously decided to rid themselves of the dominance of private capital. Although the Bois said that the black South Carolinians wanted to themselves own capital, he meant by his merely household ownership of land. By and large, according to Tera, African Americans' goal was self-sufficiency. Although they did not seem to oppose the market, the radical economic vision was consistent with individualist and mutualist varieties of anarchism. At South Carolina Constitution Convention, the black delegate, R.C. DeLarge, called for the government to buy land and distribute to the landless black families. According to Tara Hunter, freedom to Reconstruction era blacks meant to re-establish a lost family connection, the achievement of liberty and the exercise of political rights, and the security of decent livelihood without the sacrifice of human dignity or self-determination. In the context of the capitalist system trying to reimpose slavery-like conditions, these could be interpreted as revolutionary demand to reconstruct the economy, for the expropriation of distribution power, and for the system capable of offering dignity and autonomy to the country's most oppressed class of workers. In South Carolina, black residents came closest to building a society they envisioned. Their government implemented reforms much more radical than those of the explicitly revolutionary Paris Commune. Comparing South Carolina Commune to the Paris Commune, Noel indicate discussed the South Carolina Commune, and John also attribute the term to W.E.B. Du Bois. While some in Paris talk about building a public education system, Reconstruction South Carolina actually created such a system. Reconstruction South Carolina provided healthcare assistance, built institutions for deaf and the insane, and distributed land to over 14,000 black families, a century ahead of its time. The South Carolina government took the radical step of banning racial discrimination in public places, although this was not often enforced. Outside of South Carolina, Reconstruction achieved significant, tough, less radical reforms, including healthcare programs, and eliminated corporal punishment for many crimes. Before Reconstruction, public education did not exist in the South, except for the poorly funded system in North Carolina. By the end of Reconstruction, Southern government had built 100 schools, including 16 colleges with over 12,000 students. These reforms, however groundbreaking, did not encompass the full vision of Reconstruction. Ongoing struggle for justice indicated that government reform represented a moderate compromise of the grassroots vision, including the South Carolina. In 1865, hundreds of blacks in South Carolina refused to pay taxes to the state government. In 1876, farm workers in Colleton County, South Carolina went on strike and threatened to destroy planters' crops. In the state's Beaufort County, 200 black rice farmers went on to strike, locked scabs in households, overpowered sheriffs and spouses. Hine and Harrold discuss how radical black leaders were held back by both white politicians and moderate black politicians. Black leaders, they write, and I quote, often disagree on what they sounds about issues and programs. Class and pre-war status frequently divided them. Those leaders who had not been slaves and not been raised in rural isolation were less likely to be connected with land and agricultural labor. End quote. The radical black Reconstruction, which include community control. For the first time, Southern black controlled their own churches and schools. Before the Civil War, whites ran all Southern churches, and enslaved and freed blacks had to sit in the back rows. If the black population was large enough, a church with an all-black congregation would be established. But the pastors was always white. But the contrast, Reconstruction era, blacks formed their own churches. By the end of the Reconstruction, the vast majority of blacks had left white-controlled churches. Blacks asserted control over the school system and made their community's education explicitly liberatory. In Georgia, for example, African Americans successfully lobbied to change the name of the education department to Georgia Equal Rights in Education Association. Report from the school in Kentucky showed teachers encouraged students to think of themselves and explore radical social ideas. An example, teacher. Now, children, do you think white people are any better than you because they have straight hair and white face? Student, no, sir. Teacher, no, they are not better, but they are different. They possess great power, they form this government, they control this vast country. Now, what makes them different from you? Student, money. Teacher, yes, but what enabled them to obtain it? How do they get money? Student, got it of us, stole it of we all. During the direct action movement, so far it's been argued the Reconstruction challenged the white supremacist foundation of American society, had an anti-capitalist vision, and achieved significant reforms that moved society towards the vision. For such reason, the Boy considered Reconstruction a revolution, comparable to the upheavals in France in the past and in Russia, Spain, India, and China today. However, Du Bois overemphasized the role of government. The election of black politicians, while significant, was a mere piece of the Reconstruction, which was predominantly a direct action movement. Arthur Gray, a black propertyless legislator and military member of the Alabama's Tallapoosa County, called for the uprising of February 3, 1868, the eve of the elections, and I quote, am I afraid to fight the white man for my rights? No. I may go to hell for my home is hell, but the white man should go there with me and everyone come in and bring your guns and stand up for your rights. Let them talk of social equality, mixed schools, a war of races. We'll fight until we die, and go together we'll carry this Constitution. End quote. As Noel Ignatiev remarked, such speech by landless legislators signifies that we are no longer talking about bourgeois politics. Nowhere did blacks fully control the state government, even in South Carolina, where blacks achieved the greatest degree of state power. Most of the administration power was in the hands of whites. White dominated Southern police forces, and police could often be found among the ranks of the Ku Klux Klan. Police led white mobs in 4 days of violence and burning houses, churches, and schools in Memphis. In 1866, 46 blacks and 2 whites died. In the study of the Reconstruction era South, Melinda Hennessy found that the police led one-third of the South's riots, and only 3 cases did the police try to stop the riots. For African Americans, self-defense provided better protection than the police did. The Klan was rarely active where black people were in the majority and prepared to defend themselves. In the case of white supremacy, the Klan usually attacked those who could not defend themselves. The government never carried out General William Touch's officials Field Order Number 15, which promised to expropriate 400,000 acres and distribute 40-acre parcels to black families. Unable to rely on the government, blacks themselves seized the land. In some cases, they expropriate land from their former masters' estates, although they usually did not get to keep this land very long. In other cases, they occupy unused or abandoned land. Elsewhere, blacks pooled money together and collectively bought farms. Reconstruction era African American created thousands of mutual aid groups such as burial society, debating clubs, drama society, and trade associations. The establishment of these groups constituted a form of direct action. In each case, communities decided to directly and collectively improve their own lives. In Atlanta, blacks pooled together funds and built a hospital. Foner writes that those schools offer black social fellowship, sickness, and funeral benefits, and most of all, a chance to manage their own affairs. Often, mutual aid did not require formal organization. People simply help out their friends and family. Writing from Milton, Florida in 1867, Dave Waldrop offered to take care of his cousin Sarah and her children. And I quote, "Dear cousin, I received word last week that you were not doing very well in Montgomery, and times were very hard there." End quote. The letter began. In the urban South, black women wage workers quit demanding jobs, stable table scraps, stole breaks, and night illness went on strikes and formed cooperative networks encompassing neighborhoods, families, churches, and mutual aid organizations, dance halls, and vaudeville theaters. In Atlanta, female workers quit jobs to pay too little or had too many hours. Quitting, the historian Tera observed, was an effective strategy to deprive employers of complete power over their labor. In other cases, strikes were large and more coordinated. In Jackson in 1866, black female laundry workers went on strike, demanding a higher wage. The outcome of the strike is unknown. The same year in Castile, black women went on a strike against unfair pay conflict with household work. It's unclear how many strikes achieved their demand by the time the strike faded out. But, like all events, there are contradictions. The many contradictions and limitations of the Reconstruction era, a main one involved a clash between the movie's transformation vision and its reliance on protection of the very conservative federal government. In the end, the government betrayed the Southern blacks. President Andrew Johnson vetoed bills to help the African Americans. He made it easy for Confederate states to come back into the Union without guaranteeing equal rights to blacks. With the compromise in 1877, the U.S. withdrew troops from the South and Reconstruction collapsed. A second contradiction was the Reconstruction vision of the liberation sometimes stopped short of liberating women. According to Eric Foner, black preachers, editors, and politicians emphasized women's responsibility for making the home a place of peace and comfort for men and urged them to submit to their husband's authority. The records of freedmen's burial contain hundreds of complaints by black women of beatings, infidelity, and a lack of child support. A third contradiction involved criminal justice system. While Reconstruction government relaxed punishment for many crimes, they also built no prison, even as an institution, for many blacks back in slave-like condition in the convict lease system. These limitations may be argued should not have precluded revolutionary solidarity from anarchists and other leftists. The cultural Reconstruction had patriarchal aspects, but the movement also had powerful women leaders, including South Carolina's Rolling Sisters, who worked with Republican politicians while advocating women's suffrage. Reconstruction relied on military assistance from the federal government, but the government involvement has not stopped anarchists from supporting various movements. Anarchists today support the anti-authoritarian anarchist society of Rojava, despite the fact that these people have received military assistance from the U.S. Ecological anarchists tend to support acts by the federal government to enforce environmental regulations. And assistance appeared people make one easily miss the revolutionary promise of not just Reconstruction but any movement. There is no one reason why Reconstruction collapsed, but a lack of solidarity by the northern leftists was a factor. Apparently, American internationalists were able to look across the ocean of the Paris Commune but could not cast their eyes southward to South Carolina Commune, according to Noel. This lack of solidarity is a recurring theme in anarchist and leftist politics. The failure of urban Mexican anarchists to unite with the Zapatista peasants in the 1910 Mexican Revolution. The failure of the Spanish anarchists to unite with the Moroccans in the 1936 Spanish Revolution. And the Syrian kibbutz system aligned with the Zionist colonizers over the Palestinian resistors for a few examples. Or had things are changing to name anarchists joining Black Lives Matter protests, themselves often horizontally organized, decentralized, and radically critical of the existing society.